We've all heard the name Genghis Khan and know that he was some kind of big deal. He built a massive empire in the Middle Ages that stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. But where exactly did his armies go? What lands did they conquer? Today, we look at the map, the Mongol Empire at its peak. First up is Central Asia. Here we start with Mongolia itself in 1241. The Polish forces were crushed at the Battle of Legnica, while the Hungarians lost to the Mongols at the Battle of Mohi. But there was still one more direction for them to go. South Asia, by the mid-13th century. The Mongol Empire stretched from the Sea of Japan in the east to the Carpathian Mountains in Central Europe. So what's so interesting about this vast empire? For one thing, it's hard to imagine today how truly impressive it must have been, seeing such a large part of the old world. Under one government was something new in 1200. Only the Song and two Portuguese empires rivaled the Mongols in terms of power and prestige. Secondly, the Mongols were not a culturally homogeneous people. They ruled over a variety of different cultures and religions, including Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, Taoists, and others. Despite this diversity, the empire managed to stay together for as long as it did. Thirdly, the Mongol Empire was a stepping stone to even greater things. It was the first Eurasian empire, and it allowed for the exchange of ideas and goods between East and West on an unprecedented scale. The Pax Mongolica, or Mongolian peace, allowed for a degree of security across the Eurasian continent. And this made trade and cultural exchange much easier. Finally, the legacy of the Mongols lives on in their descendants, the Mongolians, who live on the steppes of Central Asia today. Their culture and way of life are still very much a part of the region, just as their ancestors once dominated it. It stretched from Siberia in the north to the Persian Gulf in the South China Sea in the south. It covered over 24 million square kilometers, which is more than the entire area of the modern United States and China combined. At its peak, the Mongol Empire was indeed the largest contiguous land-based empire in history. Northwestern India, specifically the Punjab region, was invaded 3 times by the Mongols. The first 2 times they were pushed back by the Indian powers, but in 1296 the Delhi Sultanate was overrun by the forces of Gengis Khan. However, then the Mongols never penetrated the Indian heartland. Although there are claims that they reached the Ganges, this is almost certainly exaggerated. Eastern Romania was also raided by the Mongols. And finally, the Balkans, though only the southernmost parts were reached. Bulgaria was already gone by this point, and although the No-Man Empire still existed in northern Greece, the Mongols never got that far. This is where the Mongols came from, and where Genghis Khan unified the disparate Mongol tribes into a single nation. During his invasion of the Khwarezmians, Baghdad, one of the greatest cities of the Islamic world, but it would be Kublai Khan who would later take southern China, establishing the Yuan dynasty there. Korea, or Goryeo, was also brought to heel, though not before 2 great invasions. Initially, the Mongols took Liaodong in the northern half of the Korean peninsula. After further attempts to invade, the Korean king became a vassal of the Mongols. Finally, Tibet was also brought under Mongol influence. After being largely ignored, it was incorporated into the Yuan dynasty alongside China. And finally, the Russian and Central Asian territories were conquered in the 1230s and 40s by Batak Khan and his brother Berk. Cities like Kiev were completely razed. Modern-day Ukraine, Belarus, and Moldova were devastated during the Mongol invasion. The Russian principalities were forced to pay tribute and often suffered greatly under the yoke of the Mongols. Was devastated in 1258. Much of western Iran and parts of eastern Turkey were also taken. It was the grandson of Genghis, namely Megdi, who would later push into Syria, though he didn't really gain any territory as the Syrian rulers were able to hold them off. The Caucasus region was also subjugated, including modern-day Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. It should be noted that the borders here were somewhat porous and defined more by military occupation than by strict borders. Sometimes local rulers continued to rule, but as vassals of the Mongols. Next, we have Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Tajikistan. These lands were conquered during the great campaigns against the Khwarezmian Empire. They weren't held for long, and after the death of Gengis Khan, most of these states achieved independence. Parts of Siberia were also conquered, including the Yenisei Kyrgyz and other forest peoples. Heading west now, we come to what was probably the greatest prize for Genghis Khan, the destruction of Iran and Iraq. Further east, we enter East Asia. Northern China was conquered early on when the armies of Genghis and his son, Ogide, destroyed the Western Shaya and Jin dynasties. Heading south, we find Poland and Hungary. Both were invaded with a devastating effect. And so we come to the end of the first phase of the Mongol conquests. So that's a lot of land, right? Well, even more would follow as the Mongol Empire expanded to the very ends of the earth. But it was in decline by the late 13th century, and by the early 14th century, it was no more. So what do you think? Were the Mongols good or bad for the world? Let us know in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for watching.